Ethan stepped carefully into the alien forest, his boots crunching on the soft, glowing moss. The air smelled strange, sweet and sharp at the same time, and the tall, twisting trees seemed to hum softly. Every leaf shimmered in green and blue, and tiny lights floated like stars in the mist. Ethan had explored many worlds, but nothing felt like this. He could feel danger hiding in every shadow, but curiosity pulled him forward. Suddenly, a soft whimper echoed from deep within the vines. Ethan froze, listening carefully. The sound was small, weak, almost like a child crying. He scanned the area, but the forest was thick and dark. The glowing plants cast long, moving shadows, and something rustled above in the branches. The whimper came again, closer this time, and Ethan realized it was alive. Cautiously, he parted the thick vines and gasped. A small cub, no bigger than a rabbit, sat trapped in a cage made of glowing, energy-like threads. Its fur shimmered silver, and its eyes were large and golden, looking at him with fear and hope all at once. The cage hummed and pulsed, reacting to the cub's small movements. Ethan's heart pounded. He had never seen anything like it. "Don't worry," he whispered, kneeling beside the cub. "I won't let them hurt you." Before he could touch the cage, a sudden movement in the mist made him spin around. Dark figures emerged from the fog, tall, thin hunters with glowing eyes and weapons that hummed with energy. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. There were at least 5 of them, and they moved quickly, silent but deadly. Instinct took over. Ethan threw himself in front of the cub, spreading his arms like a shield. "Get back!" he shouted, though his voice sounded small against the alien forest. One of the hunters fired a sharp, glowing blast. Ethan felt the energy hit his chest, knocking him to the ground. Pain exploded in his body, and his vision blurred. He tried to stand, but his legs refused to move. Everything went dark. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was the small cub, trembling but looking directly at him with golden eyes that seemed too wise for its size. Then, the cub cried out in a voice that was not normal, not a simple animal sound. "Mark them all!" A strange, bright light shot from the cub's body. It spread quickly, flowing through the air, touching the hunters. Ethan could barely see as the shadows of the hunters froze, their weapons dropping, their eyes wide in shock. The forest itself seemed to respond, leaves rustling violently and glowing more brightly. Ethan's body felt weak, but deep inside, he felt the cub's power pulsing, alive and strong. Even faintly he could sense it. The cub could command, could protect, could do things no human or animal could do. Something bigger than him, bigger than the hunters, was at work. When Ethan finally opened his eyes, the forest was quiet. The hunters were gone, leaving only traces of their passing in broken branches and footprints glowing faintly in the moss. The cub sat beside him, small and fragile-looking again, but its golden eyes glowed with confidence. Ethan reached out, gently touching its fur, which was soft and warm despite the strange glow. Who are you?" he whispered. The cub tilted its head, blinking slowly as if understanding every word. Its tiny mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Only its eyes, golden and intelligent, stared at him. Ethan knew this creature was more than it seemed. Around them, the forest moved strangely, as if alive. Strange plants leaned toward the cub, vines curling protectively around it. Ethan realized with a chill that the cub's power was real, and the cry "Mark them all" had done something he could not yet understand. The forest was no longer just a place of danger, it was a place of power, and the cub was at its center. Ethan slowly got to his feet, still holding the cub close. Every step felt heavy, but he could sense the forest watching, waiting. The mist shifted around them, hiding secrets, and the soft hum of glowing plants filled his ears. Somewhere deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning. The cub had chosen him, and danger was far from over. The cub looked up at him again, eyes shining, and Ethan felt a strange mixture of fear and awe. Whatever was coming next, he would face it, with this small, glowing creature by his side. And somewhere in the distance, unseen, more hunters were approaching, drawn by the cub's power. Ethan's heart pounded. He clutched the cub closer. The forest was alive, dangerous, and mysterious, and their journey had just begun. Ethan slowly opened his eyes. His head throbbed, and the forest seemed brighter than before. The glowing moss reflected in his vision, and the mist swirled gently around him. For a moment, he thought he had imagined everything, the cub, the hunters, the strange cry, but then he felt a tiny weight on his chest. The cub sat beside him, fur shimmering softly. Its golden eyes watched him carefully, full of trust and curiosity. Ethan reached out, and the cub nuzzled his hand. It made a small, soft sound, almost like a sigh of relief. Despite its size, Ethan could sense that it had power beyond understanding. He looked down at his arms and froze. Strange glowing marks ran from his wrists to his elbows. They pulsed faintly, as if breathing with the cub's life. Ethan tried to rub them off, but the glow did not fade. What is happening?" he whispered. The cub blinked, almost knowingly, as if it understood his words perfectly. Ethan struggled to sit up. The forest around them was eerily quiet. The hunters were gone, but the broken branches and glowing footprints told him they had been here. Yet now, none of the forest creatures approached them. Even the usual chirps and rustles were silent. Something had changed. He realized the cub's cry, "Mark them all," had done more than stop the hunters. It had changed the forest itself. Small vines leaned protectively toward the cub. Tiny glowing insects hovered around them, forming faint patterns in the air. Ethan felt a shiver run down his spine. The cub's power was real, but how far did it reach? Suddenly, a distant roar echoed through the trees. Ethan tensed, looking around. The sound was low, dangerous, and unlike anything he had heard before. The cub's fur bristled, and it let out a small growl. Ethan understood immediately. More danger was coming. He lifted the cub carefully, holding it close. Every instinct told him to run, but the glowing marks on his arms seemed to pulse faster with each step. It was as if the cub was connecting to him, sharing its power, guiding him through the forest. Ethan realized he was no longer just a human wandering in danger. He was part of something bigger, something alive. As they moved forward, Ethan noticed subtle changes. Every shadow seemed to shrink away from him. Leaves rustled without wind, and small animals ran along paths he hadn't walked. He paused at a glowing clearing. The cub climbed onto a rock and stared at a distant hill. Its eyes glowed brighter than before, and for a moment, Ethan felt fear and awe at the same time. Do you control them?" he whispered. The cub tilted its head, almost like it was considering his question. Then, softly, it placed a tiny paw on his arm. The marks glowed stronger. Ethan felt warmth and strength flow through him, as if he could face the entire forest and win. Suddenly, movement caught his eye. Figures emerged from the mist, fast, silent, and numerous. Hunters, more than before, and even larger than the first ones. Their glowing eyes scanned the forest, searching. Ethan froze. He was outnumbered, outmatched, and still weak from the blast that had knocked him out. The cub leapt from the rock, landing gracefully between Ethan and the approaching hunters. It growled, and its body glowed brighter. The hunters stopped in their tracks, their expressions changing from confidence to shock. Ethan's heart raced. He had seen the cub's power, but he did not yet understand it. A single hunter stepped forward, raising its weapon. The cub cried out, louder than before, "Mark them all!" Ethan felt a surge of energy pass through him. The glowing marks on his arms spread to his chest and legs, connecting him to the cub. The hunter froze mid-step, its eyes wide, and then fell to its knees. One by one, the others stopped, their weapons lowering involuntarily. Ethan realized with a mix of fear and wonder that the cub could control even dangerous creatures. The mist shifted, hiding the remaining hunters, but the forest remained quiet. Ethan took a deep breath. He looked down at the cub, small yet powerful, and realized that his mission had changed. He was no longer just protecting a cub, he was helping something far greater, something that could change the forest, perhaps even the world. Ethan stood, holding the cub carefully, his heart still pounding. The distant roars faded, but he knew this was only the beginning. The cub looked up at him, eyes glowing with determination. They would face danger together, and whatever came next, Ethan felt ready. The forest waited silently, holding its secrets. And Ethan knew one thing for sure: the cub's cry, "Mark them all," was not just a warning, it was a command, and their journey had only just begun. Ethan and the cub moved carefully through the glowing forest. Every step seemed alive, with plants bending and glowing as if they watched the small pair. Ethan still held the cub close, feeling the warmth and power that pulsed from its tiny body. The glowing marks on his arms had spread further down his hands and up his shoulders. He realized he was no longer just a protector. He was connected to the cub, bound by something he did not yet understand. The cub looked up at him, tilting its head curiously. It blinked slowly, as if trying to communicate, and Ethan felt a strange warmth in his chest. The cub seemed to recognize him not just as a guardian, but as an ally, a friend. Ethan whispered, "Don't worry, little one, I will protect you. I promise." The cub leaned into him, nuzzling his chest out as they walked. Ethan noticed signs of others' tiny footprints in the moss, broken branches, cages hidden in the underbrush. These signs told him that the cub was not alone. There were more of its kind somewhere in this strange forest, and they were in danger. His heart ached at the thought. He had protected the small cub. What about the others? Could he save them all? Suddenly, the cub stopped and raised its head. Its golden eyes glowed brighter than ever. Ethan followed its gaze and saw shadows moving far off through the mist. The cub's body stiffened, and a low, soft growl came from its throat. Ethan knew instinctively that danger was approaching. More hunters, bigger and more ruthless than before. "Stay close," Ethan whispered, kneeling down to keep the cub behind him. He looked around for a hiding place and spotted a fallen tree, with thick vines hanging down. They crawled under the protective cover, and Ethan held his breath. The hunters passed by, unaware of their hiding spot. Ethan felt a strange surge through the glowing marks on his arms. The cub pawed gently at him, and he realized that the marks were responding to the cub's emotions. It was guiding him, warning him, connecting with him. The bond between them grew stronger with each passing second. Once the hunters were gone, Ethan allowed himself a small sigh of relief. He looked at the cub, and for the first time, he spoke his thoughts aloud. "You are amazing. I don't understand how you do it, but together, maybe we can save everyone." The cub's ears twitched, and it blinked slowly, almost as if it understood every word. They continued their journey deeper into the forest, moving carefully around glowing plants that pulsed with alien life. Ethan felt that the cub was teaching him silently how to move, how to read the forest, how to sense danger before it came. Each time he looked at the cub, he saw intelligence far beyond any animal he had known. This was not just a creature in need of protection, it was a leader, a being of power. Hours passed, and they finally reached a small clearing. Sunlight, or what passed for sunlight here, filtered through the canopy. In the center of the clearing was a large, shallow pond with crystal-clear water. The cub jumped down eagerly and ran to the edge, drinking quickly. Ethan knelt beside it, scooping up water to drink as well. "Do you think we can save them?" he asked quietly. The cub paused, ears forward, and blinked. Then it touched his arm gently with a paw. The glowing marks shimmered brightly, and Ethan felt hope surge through him. Whatever the cub's power was, it was not only defense, it was guidance, strength, and courage. Together, they could face the hunters and save the other cubs. Suddenly, a sound shattered the quiet, the roar of distant creatures, louder than before, echoing through the trees. Ethan's pulse quickened. The cub's fur bristled, and its golden eyes glowed intensely. Ethan instinctively lifted the cub, holding it close. They would not run this time. They would face whatever came next together. The cub let out a soft, low cry, and the forest seemed to respond. Leaves swirled in the air, glowing with energy. Ethan realized the bond was not just between him and the cub, it connected them to the forest itself. The cub's cry carried power, shaping the world. Around them, preparing for the challenges ahead, Ethan swallowed hard. His chest still hurt from the first attack, but his heart felt lighter. He was no longer alone. He had a companion, a guide, a friend, and a force unlike anything he had ever seen. The cub may have been small, but its courage, intelligence, and power were greater than any enemy they had faced so far. As they left the clearing, the cub trotting beside him, Ethan felt a renewed determination. He would protect this creature at all costs, learn its power, and save the other cubs. The bond between them was strong, and together, they would face the hunters again. The forest loomed ahead, dark and full of unknown dangers, but Ethan no longer felt fear, only purpose. The cub looked up at him once more, golden eyes shining, as if promising, "We will succeed. Together." Ethan and the cub moved quietly through the forest, their steps soft against the glowing moss. The forest seemed alive, every plant bending slightly as they passed. Ethan's arms still bore the faint, glowing marks, a constant reminder of the cub's strange and powerful influence. He kept the small creature close, feeling the warmth and energy that pulsed from it. Suddenly, a loud snap echoed from the trees above. Ethan froze. The cub's ears twitched, and its golden eyes glowed brighter. Shadows moved through the mist, more hunters, faster and larger than the first ones they had seen. Ethan's heart pounded. He could feel the cub's fear and determination. At the same time, it wanted him to protect it, but it also seemed ready to fight. "Stay behind me," Ethan whispered, lifting the cub gently. His voice was steady, but inside, he felt the rush of adrenaline and fear. The hunters circled them, weapons glowing in the dim light. Ethan counted at least 7, their bodies thin but strong, their eyes sharp and cruel. He realized they were outnumbered, outmatched, but retreat would be impossible. The hunters raised their energy weapons, aiming directly at them. Ethan gritted his teeth and stepped in front of the cub. "I won't let you touch it," he shouted. One hunter fired, and a beam of light shot through the air, narrowly missing Ethan. He ducked, feeling the heat of the blast against his back. The forest seemed to respond to the tension, vines twisting and leaves rustling as if warning him. Cub jumped from his arms, landing lightly on the ground. Its fur shimmered with silver light, and a low growl rumbled from its throat. Ethan watched in awe as its golden eyes glowed brighter, pulsing like a heartbeat. Then, in a voice louder than before, the cub cried out, "Mark them all!" Ethan felt a surge of energy flow through him. The glowing marks on his arms flared, spreading warmth and power into his chest and legs. He could feel the cub's strength merging with his own. The hunters froze mid-step, their weapons lowering involuntarily. One hunter tried to move, but its limbs stiffened, and it fell to the ground. The cub leapt forward, small yet fearless. Each step it took seemed to radiate power. Ethan followed closely, feeling the glow in his arms guide him. Every movement of the cub created a ripple in the forest. Vines twisted and curled, blocking the hunter's path, while glowing plants released bursts of light that dazzled them. Ethan realized that the cub's power was more than control over others. It could influence the forest itself. The hunters tried to advance, but the ground beneath them shifted slightly, roots and vines tripping them. Ethan gritted his teeth and moved swiftly, pushing a fallen log in front of one hunter, knocking it off balance. The cub ran between the hunters, nipping and pawing at their weapons. Every time it cried, "Mark them all," more hunters faltered, their movements uncertain. Ethan marveled at the tiny creature's courage. It was small, fragile-looking, but fearless. And together, they formed a force far greater than any one of them alone. Suddenly, one hunter fired again. A quick beam aimed directly at Ethan. He ducked and rolled, narrowly avoiding the blast. The cub jumped in front of him, glowing brightly. The energy beam hit it, but instead of harming the cub, it scattered into sparks across the forest, illuminating the trees with a strange, beautiful light. Ethan realized the cub could deflect attacks with its power. The hunters, now terrified, hesitated. They looked at each other, unsure whether to continue. Ethan stepped forward, chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. He still felt the fear, but he also felt something new. Confidence, born from the bond with the cub. "Go back," he shouted. "You won't harm this forest or the cub." The hunters stumbled backward, their weapons dropping. The cub cried, "Once more, mark them all." And the last hunter froze completely, then slowly turned and ran into the mist, leaving broken branches and glowing footprints behind. The forest returned to its quiet, mysterious hum. Ethan knelt beside the cub, holding it close. "That was incredible," he whispered. The cub blinked slowly, nuzzling him. Its golden eyes shimmered, almost proudly, as if it understood what they had just done together. Ethan looked around at the quiet forest, broken only by the soft glow of moss and leaves. He knew this was only the first battle. The hunters would return, stronger and more determined. But now he had seen the cub's full power, and he understood one thing. Together, they could face anything. The cub pawed his arm gently, and the glowing marks flared one last time before settling. Ethan smiled, feeling the bond between them stronger than ever. They had survived the first battle, but the forest was still full of danger, and more challenges waited ahead. Ethan took a deep breath and stood. "We need to keep moving," he said softly. The cub leapt lightly onto his shoulder, golden eyes scanning the path ahead. The forest seemed to hold its breath, and Ethan knew the real journey had only just begun. Ethan moved through the forest cautiously. The cub perched lightly on his shoulder. The glowing marks on his arms pulsed softly, like a heartbeat, linking him to the tiny creature. The forest around them was still and quiet now, but Ethan knew danger still lurked. The first battle had shown him the hunter's strength, and he could not ignore the possibility of more. As they walked, Ethan noticed strange signs along the path, footprints leading to clusters of glowing vines, broken branches that had been cut cleanly, and strange hums in the air. Something told him they were not far from the source of the danger, the place where the hunters kept their captives. The cub leapt lightly to the ground and padded ahead, ears forward, sniffing the air. Ethan followed, keeping low. Soon, they reached a dark clearing. In the center stood a structure unlike any building Ethan had seen. It was a cage, but massive, stretching wide and tall, glowing faintly with the same energy that had trapped the cub earlier. And inside he could see shadows moving, other cubs, small and frightened, huddled together. Ethan's chest tightened. He had known the cub was not alone, but seeing them trapped like this filled him with anger and determination. "We have to get them out," he whispered. The cub tilted its head and pawed at his arm, the glowing marks flaring brighter. Ethan realized the cub was communicating a plan, urging him to stay calm and focus. Suddenly, alarms blared from the base, a high-pitched sound that echoed through the forest. Hunters appeared instantly, more than Ethan had ever seen. They moved with precision, surrounding the clearing, weapons glowing in their hands. Ethan froze for a moment, but the cub leapt from his shoulder, landing in the center of the clearing. Its fur shimmered brightly, and golden eyes glowed like twin suns. "Mark them all!" The cub cried, voice ringing through the clearing. The hunters stopped mid-step. The glowing marks on Ethan's arms flared, spreading warmth and energy through his body. He felt the cub's power link with him, like electricity flowing through every nerve. Suddenly, vines from the surrounding forest twisted and curled around the hunters, blocking their path. Ethan realized the cub could control not only creatures, but also the environment. The cub moved swiftly, nipping at the cage's energy barriers. Ethan followed, using fallen logs and rocks to knock loose supports while staying hidden from the hunters. Each cage released a small cub, who immediately scurried toward the glowing cub. The forest seemed alive with their movement, plants bending protectively, insects buzzing in a coordinated pattern. Ethan's awe grew. These tiny creatures were far stronger and more intelligent than he could have imagined. A hunter fired, and a beam of energy cut through the clearing. Ethan ducked instinctively, but the cub leapt in front of him, glowing so brightly that the blast scattered harmlessly into the forest. Ethan felt the power radiate through him and knew that, together, they were unstoppable. The hunters faltered, fear visible in their eyes as they realized they could not touch the cubs. Ethan worked quickly, freeing each cub. Some were hesitant, others trembling with fear. The cub guided them all, its golden eyes glowing as it communicated silently. Ethan saw for the first time the full meaning of "mark them all." The cub was calling all eyes, protecting friends, and controlling enemies, all at once. The forest itself obeyed its call. As the last cub scrambled free, a massive shadow appeared at the edge of the clearing. Ethan froze, recognizing it instantly. A larger, heavily armored hunter, far stronger than any they had faced. Its eyes glowed red, scanning the clearing. Ethan's heart pounded, but the cub's paw pressed against his arm, glowing brighter than ever. Together, they could face this new threat. The cub cried once more, golden eyes blazing, and Ethan felt the energy flow through him, steadying his fear. He knew they had escaped the base itself, but the fight was not over. Danger still waited, stronger and closer than ever. Ethan held the cub tightly, looking at the small rescued tribe of glowing creatures huddled behind them. His chest swelled with pride and purpose. This was more than survival, they were starting a rebellion against the hunters, and the cub was their leader. The forest watched silently, holding its breath. Ethan knew one thing for sure: the hidden base had been just the first step. The hunters would return, but now together, Ethan and the cubs had the forest, the power, and courage on their side. He took a deep breath, ready for whatever came next. The journey was far from over, but he was no longer alone, and neither was the cub. Ethan ran through the forest, heart pounding in his chest. The cub clung lightly to his shoulder, golden eyes glowing, alert and sharp. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew louder. Hunters, faster and stronger than any they had faced before, were closing in. The glowing marks on Ethan's arms pulsed. With the cub's energy guiding his steps and giving him strength he didn't know he had, he glanced down at the small creature. "Hold on, little one. We're almost out of this," he whispered. The cub blinked, as if it understood every word, and let out a low, determined growl. Together, they moved as one, weaving through twisted vines, jumping over roots, and ducking under glowing branches. The forest seemed alive, bending around them, protecting them in ways Ethan could barely understand. The hunters were relentless. Their weapons glowed, cutting through the mist, and Ethan could see the rage and determination in their eyes. They were not just hunting, they were determined to take the cub back no matter what. Ethan felt a spike of fear, but the cub's energy flowed into him, steadying his mind. He was no longer running for survival alone, he was running to protect something far greater. Suddenly, a fallen tree blocked the path. Ethan skidded to a halt, heart racing. The hunters were closing in, shadows moving fast through the mist. The cub leapt from his shoulder, landing lightly on the tree. Its fur shimmered with silver light, and golden eyes glowed fiercely. Ethan watched in awe as the cub pawed at the tree, and the branches twisted and shifted, creating a bridge over the hunter's path. "Mark them all," the cub cried, voice echoing through the forest. The glowing marks on Ethan's arms flared brightly. Energy surged through him, sharp and powerful. The hunters stopped abruptly, confused and hesitant. The forest itself seemed to rise against them. Vines shot up from the ground, glowing plants swirled in the air, and roots twisted to block the path. Ethan realized the cub's power was no longer small, it was shaping the environment itself. Ethan took a deep breath and ran, carrying one of the freed cubs while the others followed the glowing cub's lead. The hunters tried to fight, firing energy blasts, but each shot seemed to fizzle as the cub's glow reflected and diverted them. Ethan ducked under a falling branch, feeling the power of the forest supporting him. The cub's cries rang out again, and suddenly, the hunters froze in their tracks, rooted to the ground as if the forest itself held them. They ran faster, leaping over roots and dodging low-hanging branches. Ethan could feel the cub guiding him, a silent hand on his mind, directing him through danger. He realized that the cub was not just protecting them, it was controlling the battlefield, turning every plant, vine, and shadow into an ally. A hunter fired a blast that came too close, striking a nearby tree. It splintered into glowing shards that scattered across the path. Ethan rolled, holding the cub tight, heart pounding with fear and adrenaline. He glanced back and saw the hunters retreating, faltering under the cub's command. The tiny creature, small and fragile-looking, had become the most dangerous force in the forest. Finally, they reached the edge of the jungle. Beyond, a wide-open plain awaited, bathed in soft light. Ethan slowed, panting, carrying the freed cubs, with the glowing cub leading the way. The hunters were far behind, stopped by the cub's influence and the forest's power. Ethan realized that the chase was over for now. He knelt in the clearing, letting the cub climb onto his shoulder. The glowing marks on his arms faded to a soft pulse, a reminder of the bond between them. The freed cubs huddled close, looking up at their glowing leader with trust and awe. Ethan felt a swell of pride and relief. They had survived the hunt, freed the captives, and escaped danger together. But even in this moment of triumph, Ethan knew the threat was far from over. Somewhere beyond the trees, bigger hunters waited, more dangerous and more cunning. The cub's power was immense, but the forest was only one battlefield. Ethan looked at the tiny creature on his shoulder, golden eyes glowing softly. Together, they had faced impossible odds and survived. Together, they were unstoppable. The cub pawed gently at his arm, and the glowing marks shimmered faintly. Ethan smiled, feeling the strength of their bond. He whispered, "We did it. But this is only the beginning." Above them, the forest stretched into the distance, alive and mysterious, full of hidden dangers and possibilities. Ethan knew the final battle was coming, but with the cub and the freed tribe of creatures beside him, he felt ready for anything. Their journey was far from over, and the hunters would return. But this time, they would be ready. Ethan stepped out of the forest. Sunlight, or what passed for sunlight on this alien world, filtering through the trees. His legs were tired. His chest ached from running, but he felt a sense of purpose he had never known before. The cub perched on his shoulder, golden eyes glowing softly, and the freed cubs followed closely behind, forming a small, shimmering tribe. For a moment, the forest was quiet, almost peaceful. Ethan looked at the cub, still small and fragile in appearance, yet radiating a power that had saved them all. He realized that the cub had chosen him, not just as a protector, but as a partner. They were connected now, bound by something stronger than fear or survival, trust and courage. "Good job, little one," Ethan whispered. The cub blinked slowly, nuzzling his neck. Its golden eyes seemed to shine with understanding. Ethan smiled. Despite everything, the hunts, the danger, the fear, they had survived. But he knew deep down that this was not the end. A shadow passed over them, and Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Above in the pale sky, a massive figure loomed. A gigantic alien hunter, stronger and more intimidating than any they had faced. Its eyes glowed red, scanning the clearing. Ethan's pulse quickened. But he did not panic. He had the cub, and the cub's power was immense. The cub leapt from Ethan's shoulder, landing lightly in front of the others. Its fur shimmered with silver light, and its golden eyes blazed. "Mark them all!" it cried, voice strong and commanding. Ethan felt the energy surge through his arms, spreading to his chest and legs. The freed cubs followed, their small bodies glowing faintly as if responding to their leader's call. Even the forest seemed to awaken. Glowing vines curled protectively around them, roots shifted to block paths, and the air thrummed with energy. Giant Hunter froze mid-step. Ethan realized the cub's power had grown even stronger, now able to influence not just the forest and small hunters, but a force far larger and more dangerous. The creature's presence was intimidating, but it hesitated, unsure how to challenge the cub's command. Ethan stood tall, holding the cub close to his chest. He felt the glowing marks pulse against his skin, reminding him of their bond. The cub pawed at his arm gently, and he knew what to do. He did not need weapons or strategy. The cub's power, combined with his courage, was enough. The giant hunter roared, but the forest responded instantly. Vines whipped around its legs, roots rising from the ground to block its movements. The freed cubs swirled around the clearing, their energy amplifying the leader's call. Ethan felt awe and fear at the same time. The small creature he had protected had become the most powerful force in the forest. With a final, glowing cry, the cub shouted again, "Mark them all!" The giant hunter's eyes widened, and for a moment, it trembled before retreating into the sky, wings flapping, leaving the forest and its inhabitants behind. Ethan exhaled slowly. They had won not through violence, but through courage, bond, and the cub's incredible power. The forest seemed to settle, glowing softly in the gentle light. Ethan looked at the cub, golden eyes shining proudly. The freed cubs gathered around him, small but confident now. He realized something profound. The cub had not just survived the hunts. It had chosen a protector, a human brave enough to stand with it, and in doing so, had created a new alliance between species. Ethan knelt, letting the cub climb onto his shoulder. "We did it," he whispered. The cub nuzzled him, as if saying, "Yes, together we can face anything." He felt the forest around them, alive, protective, and aware. They were no longer just a human and a single creature. They were part of something greater, a force that could defend itself and grow stronger. He turned his gaze to the horizon. Beyond the forest lay unknown dangers, other hunters, and new challenges. But for the first time, Ethan did not feel fear. He had the cub, and the cub had chosen him. Together, they were a new kind of protector, a beacon of courage and hope for the forest and its creatures. The cub leapt down lightly, moving among the freed cubs. Ethan followed, smiling, feeling a strength he had never known. The hunters might return, and the world might challenge them, but he understood one truth. He would never be alone again, and neither would the cub. The forest whispered around them, the glowing leaves shimmering like stars. The cub looked up at Ethan once more, golden eyes bright, and for the first time, he felt calm. Together, they had survived the impossible. Together, they would face whatever came next. And in the distance, hidden among the trees, the faintest glow of more cubs hinted at new allies waiting. Ethan tightened his grip on the cub. The journey had ended for now, but their story, their bond, and their courage would continue, stronger than ever.